My fruit leather used to always turn out kind of flat, and while it was leathery, it certainly wasn't the soft, chewy leather that I remember from the grocery store growing up, until I learned this one trick, and it changed my fruit leather into this amazing, great, almost just like store-bought fruit leather. Check it out. Here in the far north of Idaho, we only have a few months of the year where we have fresh fruits and veggies. The rest of the year, we have to rely on our preservation methods in order to have fruits and veggies to eat. When it comes to fruit, something like these berries, especially something fresh and soft like this, there's only a few different preservation methods that really make them still taste really good. But unfortunately, most of them use a lot of sugar. I just don't want to encourage my family to eat any more sugar than is already out there in their diet. I tried to figure out what kind of fruit snack would be absolutely awesome to feed my family. And I came up with fruit leathers. Now, if you make fruit leathers the traditional way that's recommended out there on most blogs and videos, you end up with something that's really not that awesome. It's pretty thin, kind of tough, hard to chew, and the edges are often brittle. But if you add this one secret ingredient, then you end up with fruit leathers like you used to get as a kid from the grocery store. Let's check it out. My secret ingredient is pectin. Adding pectin to your fruit leather allows it to be nice and thick and chewy and soft all at the same time in a wonderful way. But unfortunately, most pectins are activated by sugar, which means you have to put a lot of sugar into your fruit preserves in order to make it thicken up. Thankfully, Pomona's pectin is activated by calcium, which they put in a separate packet inside their pectin package so that you can not add a lot of sugar. In fact, you don't have to add any sugar at all if you don't want to. Today, I am making a strawberry fruit leather, and I'm going to be making it with only fruit, which means the only sweetener that I'm going to use is a little bit of white grape juice concentrate. Now, this is what you find in the frozen juice section of your supermarket. Make sure you get the kind that's all fruit. Remember, we're trying not to add sugar. So we're going to start with our 3.5 pounds of strawberries that have been washed and hulled. And we're going to get these all nice and mashed up. Now, if we were making a jam that we were going to can, I'd say make sure you actually mash them because it's going to give you the best texture. But for fruit leather, I really want it to be almost a puree. I really want to make it nice and smooth. So I'm going to go ahead and run it in the blender and make it pretty smooth. All right, now I started with that 3.5 pounds, but I'm really looking for about 6 cups of the puree. That's the final measurement. So I have a little bit left here. I might go ahead and use the rest of my strawberries a little bit later and make another batch. You can be very comfortable tripling, doubling, tripling, even quadrupling the recipe with Pomona's pectin. Some regular pectins won't actually gel if you multiply the recipe, but Pomona's actually works really well, and I often make quadruple batches or even more depending on the pot size that I have on hand. Now I need to add in that 4 teaspoons of calcium water and stir that up really, really well. Now this is going to go into a heavy bottomed sauce pot, and we're going to go ahead and start bringing this up to a simmer while we take our next step, which is going to be back in the blender. So I'm going to have to go clean out the blender real fast. All right, let's just turn this on medium to bring it up to that simmer. Now, since we're not using sugar, we have to go ahead and use the blender in order to mix the pectin all the way in and make sure it's spread throughout the entire fruit leather batter, sauce, jam, I don't know. All right, so let's go ahead and put that white grape juice concentrate right on into the blender. And put the lid on. We're going to turn it on to low, and then we're going to slowly add the pectin in. Then we're going to let it blend for about 1 to 2 minutes until it is well mixed. Now we're just going to set this aside while we're waiting for our fruit to come up to a simmer right back here. Once it's at a simmer, we're going to go ahead and add this in and then bring it back up to a simmer, let it simmer for an entire minute, and then we're going to want to work really quickly to get that fruit sauce onto the dehydrator sheet. So make sure you have them all ready to go. I'm going to go grab mine right now. It's super important to use a low sugar recipe when you're using pectin to make fruit leathers. The reason for that is that sugar does not dehydrate well. It holds on to its moisture very firmly, which means that it will stay damp and sticky even when it's thoroughly dehydrated. This is a problem for a finished fruit leather. You want something that's gonna feel nice and soft, but still dry to the touch. You don't want something with pockets of syrup. So make sure you use an all fruit or no sugar recipe, or a very low sugar recipe when you're making a sauce like this for a fruit leather. Now that this has come up to a nice simmer, I'm gonna go ahead and add that blended pectin mixture. And I'm gonna stir really well for a full minute. This is just lightly thickening up, but we've stirred for a full minute. So we wanna go ahead now and work quickly to spread this out on those leather trays that we have all prepared before it starts to thicken up too much. If you've never used these silicone fruit leather trays, I highly recommend getting yourself a few. If you're used to just working on the flat sheets, this is a real treat. And because it has this short lip all the way around, it makes it super easy to go ahead and get the right thickness instead of having to spread this out. Now look at this. Right now it looks really thin, but this is going to thicken up really well. Now it's important to remember that pectin is actually really healthy for you. It has a lot of insoluble fiber in it that just aids your digestion. So this is actually making the fruit leather even healthier for you to eat. I absolutely love that. I have this spread all the way out, all the way to all the corners here, and I'm gonna very carefully take it over to the dehydrator and slide it right on in. Then I'm gonna finish up the other trays that I have here. It looks like I have enough for maybe one more tray in this batch. We're gonna turn that dehydrator either onto low or to about 110 to 115 degrees and let it go until it is still nice and soft, but all the way dehydrated. Ooh, here we go. All right, you guys, this is so exciting. Look at this. Our fruit leather is done. It's been in the dehydrator for about 14 hours, and then I went ahead and I let it cool. And I checked it to make sure that it was dehydrated all the way through. There were no wet spots, even down here underneath in the middle. And look at how soft and pliable this is, you guys. It's just pulling all right off. Nothing is brittle. There are some spots on the edges that are a little thinner than the other spots. When you're checking to make sure that anything that you've dehydrated is done dehydrating, make sure you let it cool down first before you make your final decision. That's because the texture of dehydrated food changes when it goes from warm in the dehydrator to cool or room temperature. But you can see this is nice and cool now, and you can see that this is completely done, and it's so soft and jelly. It is ready right now for you to either put it into strips and slice it like this, or for you to take a cookie cutter and to cut it out into cute little shapes. Then I like to just wrap them up or roll them up in some parchment paper. I love this good all natural brand of If You Care. I find that on Azure Standard. I love getting to use all natural things like that. And then they're shelf stable and ready to store until you want to eat them. Hey, you guys, if you're looking to put up more food and preserve more, then you're gonna wanna check out this video right here about the 5 mistakes to avoid while canning.